He thought he was helping a lost hiker in the woods. But days later the man was still there. And by the time he realized the truth, it was already living with him. It all started with small things disappearing. At first it was barely noticeable. A garden trowel here, a bag of fertilizer there. Nothing expensive, nothing that seemed worth stealing. But the family couldn't explain it. Doors were locked, windows shut, the dog was always outside when it could be. And yet, something was taking things from their yard. The first night it really got strange was when Lisa, the mother, heard footsteps outside. Soft at first, like someone was shuffling along the edge of the house, then heavier, deliberate. She thought it was her imagination. After all, it was late and she'd been working 2 jobs. But her unease grew. The next morning, the garden hose had been moved, and a chair from the porch was sitting in the middle of the yard. Her husband, Mark, joked about a raccoon or a neighborhood kid, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching them. Then things started vanishing from inside the house. At first, it was small items. A pair of gloves from the kitchen counter, a hammer from the toolbox. But it escalated. Jewelry, a few dollars from Mark's wallet, a family photo, gone. Nothing else in the house seemed disturbed. It wasn't messy, it was targeted. Someone was inside, but leaving almost nothing behind. Mark, frustrated and tired, finally set up a motion sensor camera in the backyard. They didn't check it every night, just occasionally, hoping to catch the culprit. That's when they saw him. The first video clip was enough to freeze them in horror. A man, in his 40s, thin and ragged, wearing clothes that looked like they'd been scavenged from trash bins. He crouched near the shed at the edge of the yard, rifling through the garden tools. He looked around, sniffed the air, then disappeared behind the shed. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't a prankster. It was someone living in their backyard. The family called the police immediately. Officers came, searched the property, and found something that made Lisa's stomach turn. Inside the shed, which was small but intact, there were blankets, a worn sleeping bag, and a collection of stolen household items. Everything from their home, neatly organized in stacks. Even the family photo that had gone missing sat on a shelf, face up. The man, when confronted, didn't resist. He had been living there for months, hiding in the shed, careful never to make direct contact. He spoke quietly, almost like he was ashamed. He had no permanent home, no family. He said he'd watched the family, learning their habits, always leaving when he thought they might see him. But he never imagined anyone would notice. The police found more than just stolen items. A notebook, pages filled with sketches of the family's yard, the layout of the house, and notes about their routines. When Lisa read some of them later, she felt like her entire life had been invaded. The stranger had been inside their lives in a way no one could see, no one could hear, until now. Even worse, the family discovered that some of their belongings had been tampered with. Mark's toolbox had screws removed from tools. Lisa's kitchen knives were blunt as if they'd been sharpened and tested. The man hadn't stolen to survive. He had been observing, cataloging, practicing control. After he was arrested, the family tried to feel safe again. They installed cameras, reinforced locks, double-checked every corner of the yard. But even months later, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always there, watching from the shadows. And sometimes, late at night, she thought she saw a figure at the edge of the yard, crouched near the shed, just watching. The strangest part? The police found no other belongings in the shed except what belonged to the family. Nothing else, no identification, no money, no hint of another life. It was as if he existed only in the margins of their home, feeding off the ordinary and turning it into something terrifying. They never found out exactly how he got in the first time. The locks were old but intact, the doors secure. It was the idea that terrified them the most. He had been there for months, unseen, unheard, a shadow in their backyard, waiting, learning. To this day, Lisa and Mark say they can't look at that shed without a shiver. It's just a shed. Simple, wooden, ordinary. But for them, it will always be a monument to the stranger who lived among them, silently, in plain sight. And sometimes, late in the afternoon, when the wind shifts just right and the clouds hide the sun, Lisa swears she can hear the faint scraping of a foot on gravel, coming from the shed, and she wonders if he's really gone. It started on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where sunlight spilled lazily across the quiet suburban street, birds chirped, and neighbors watered their lawns. Sarah had lived next to the Hendersons for over 3 years. Well, she thought she had. For weeks now, the house next door had looked abandoned. Mail piled up on the porch, the blinds were always drawn, and the once vibrant garden had wilted into a patch of brown. Everyone assumed Mr. Henderson had moved, probably out of state or into a retirement community. No one had seen him in days, and Sarah hadn't really thought much of it. Until that morning. It was the sound that first caught her attention. A low, muffled noise like someone groaning. She froze, listening. The street was quiet, almost too quiet. Then, faintly, it came again. A call for help? She blinked against the sun and peered through the gaps in the blinds. Nothing. Just the empty porch and the peeling paint of the front door. For a week, Sarah told herself it was nothing. Old pipes, maybe a raccoon trapped somewhere. But then the noises got louder. Whimpers, the occasional metallic clang. Sometimes she swore she saw shadows moving behind the curtains like someone pacing. One afternoon, she noticed the side gate was slightly ajar. Hesitating, she stepped closer, her heart hammering. She could see part of the backyard, overgrown and unkempt, but what really froze her was the faint outline of a face pressed against the glass of the kitchen window. Eyes wide, terrified and desperate. Sarah gasped. "Mr. Henderson?" she whispered, barely audible. No response. She ran to the front door, banging on it, shouting. Still nothing. The windows rattled slightly, but the blinds didn't move. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept imagining him trapped behind that glass, alone, afraid. By morning, she had decided she couldn't wait for someone else to do something. She called the police, explaining the situation, her voice trembling. By mid-morning, an officer arrived. They checked the doors, they were locked, bolted from the inside. Windows were reinforced, and there were no signs of forced entry. Sarah's stomach dropped. How could he be trapped inside if no one had entered? Then, from the side of the house, came a muffled scream. The officers moved quickly, breaking the back gate open and surrounding the property. That's when they found it. A small hatch, hidden beneath the kitchen pantry. It led to a narrow crawl space so tight a person could barely turn around. And there, curled up in darkness, was Mr. Henderson. His clothes were torn, his skin pale and scraped, but he was alive. And as soon as he saw Sarah, he began to cry, whispering, "I've been here for weeks. They wouldn't let me out." "What do you mean?" one officer asked. Someone else was living here," he stammered. "A man, he stayed in the basement. He said, if I tried to leave he'd..." His voice broke off. The police searched the house but found no one. The basement was empty, dark and silent. No signs of struggle. No one inside. It was as if the intruder had vanished entirely, without a trace, leaving Henderson trapped in his own home, held prisoner by a presence that had vanished like a ghost. Neighbors were shocked. Who would do such a thing? How could someone live undetected in a fully occupied suburban street? Sarah couldn't shake the image of his terrified eyes pressed against the glass, silently begging for help while the world carried on, oblivious. In the following weeks, Sarah learned the most chilling part. Mr. Henderson had no memory of how he'd survived those days. No food, no way to call out, no clue how he wasn't found sooner. Just, someone, or something, had kept him prisoner in plain sight. Sarah moved out a month later. She couldn't drive past the house without feeling her stomach knot up, imagining eyes watching her from the drawn blinds, waiting for the next person to notice, the next person to see, but never know who or what had been there. Some say the intruder was a man hiding in plain sight, gone now. Others whisper it was something less human. Whatever it was, it had one rule: you could never leave until it said so. And sometimes, on quiet streets during broad daylight, Sarah swears she hears muffled noises coming from the empty houses she passes, as if someone, or something, is still trapped, silently waiting for someone to notice. Because the scariest thing isn't the night. It isn't the shadows. It's knowing someone can be right next to you, screaming for help, and the world doesn't even notice. The Johnsons had hired Emily, a 16-year-old from the neighborhood, to babysit their 3-month-old daughter while they went out for the evening. It wasn't her first time, and the parents had left strict instructions. The baby goes down at 7, monitor in the living room, and absolutely no wandering into other rooms. Emily promised she'd follow the rules. It started off like any other babysitting job. The house was quiet, the soft hum of the heater blending with the faint sounds from the baby monitor. Emily fed the baby, changed her diaper, and put her down in the crib. She settled on the couch with a book, occasionally glancing at the monitor. Everything seemed normal. Then around 9 she heard it. A faint whisper. Emily froze. It came again, a low, breathy voice. At first she thought she was imagining it, maybe the baby stirring, but the whisper continued. Words she couldn't make out, almost as if someone was practicing lines from a play. She put the monitor down and got up to check the nursery. The baby was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Nothing seemed out of place. Emily laughed nervously to herself. Okay, probably just my imagination, she whispered. But then it came again, clearer this time. Help, please. Emily's heart skipped. She spun toward the monitor. The voice was coming through it, but the baby was still asleep. The house was empty. Her instincts told her to leave, to run and call the parents. But curiosity got the better of her. She followed the sound, stepping cautiously around the living room toward the nursery wall. That's when she noticed it. A section of the wall looked slightly different. The paint didn't quite match. It was subtle, almost invisible if you weren't looking for it. Her hands trembled as she pressed against it. The wall gave slightly, hollow beneath her fingers. Emily's pulse raced. She took a deep breath, searching the kitchen for something she could use as a tool. A butter knife would have to do. Slowly, she wedged it into the seam of the wall and began prying. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, almost like it was right behind the wall now. The panel shifted, revealing a narrow doorway hidden from sight entirely. Emily froze, staring into darkness. It smelled damp and metallic. Her first thought was a crawlspace or a storage closet, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw something that made her stomach drop. Inside, the room was small, barely big enough for one person to stand. And there, in the dim light, were pieces of clothing, tiny clothes, torn and dirty, and scraps of paper scattered across the floor. Then she noticed it, photographs yellowed with age of babies. All of them smiling, all of them missing from somewhere. The whispers were louder now, insistent, almost desperate. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a shrine, or worse, a record. Whoever had built this room had been keeping track of children. And it wasn't old. Some of the items looked recent. Some even smelled faintly of bleach and powder, like a nursery. She stumbled backward, bumping into the doorway. The baby monitor crackled violently, and Emily swore she heard the same voice again. Don't let them find me. Her first instinct was to run, but she needed proof. She snapped pictures with her phone, every shaky shot showing more of the room, more evidence of something she couldn't begin to comprehend. Then she heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, on the floorboards above her. Someone was home. The parents hadn't returned yet. Panic surged. Emily backed out of the hidden room and slammed the panel closed. She grabbed the baby, clutching her tightly, and ran for the door. The footsteps followed, faster now, heavier. She flung the door open and raced into the street, screaming for help. The neighbors came running. Police arrived minutes later. They searched the house and found nothing. The hidden room had vanished as if it had never existed. The wall was solid, the seams perfectly flush, no indication of what Emily had seen. The Johnsons were baffled, insisting there had never been a hidden space. But Emily knew what she had heard, what she had seen. The whispers, the photographs, the tiny clothes, they weren't a dream. To this day she avoids babysitting. She avoids that street entirely. And sometimes, late at night, she swears she can still hear a faint voice through a baby monitor, whispering, "Don't let them find me." And every time she does, she shivers, remembering the room that should not exist, and the evidence of horrors someone had gone to unimaginable lengths to hide. It was supposed to be a routine drive. Michael, a man in his late 20s, had just finished an early morning errand and decided to take a short detour through his hometown before heading back to the city. It was a small town, the kind you could drive through in 10 minutes, usually bustling with life. Children waiting at bus stops, shopkeepers sweeping the sidewalks, the occasional dog barking in a yard. But that morning something felt off. At first he chalked it up to the early hour. Maybe everyone was still inside, he thought, adjusting the rearview mirror. But as he drove down Main Street, the emptiness pressed against him like a cold weight. The streets were immaculate, swept, quiet, but utterly deserted. Cars sat in driveways, doors left unlocked, bicycles resting against fences, yet no one moved. Not a single person. Michael slowed, then stopped the car near the old bakery. Its sign swung gently in the wind. He stepped out, half expecting someone to appear, but the silence was deafening. He could hear his own heartbeat. The town smelled faintly of bread and rain, an oddly familiar comfort that now felt sinister. "Hello?" he called, his voice bouncing off the brick walls. Nothing. He wandered further, past the town square where the fountain usually gurgled lazily. Today it was still. And then he noticed something. Every single window from the corner diner to the library had shadows pressed against them. He blinked, convinced it was a trick of the sunlight. But no, they weren't shadows. They were figures. Standing. Watching. Panic fluttered in his chest. He ran back to the car. "This isn't funny," he muttered, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life and he drove faster, scanning the streets. He passed houses that he knew like the back of his hand. The Petersons' porch swing still creaked slightly, though no one was there. Mrs. Alvarez's cat sat on the fence, staring at him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. He turned the corner toward the old church, hoping to find at least one person, maybe someone who could explain anything. The church doors hung open, swaying slowly. He stepped out of the car, drawn by a mix of curiosity and dread. The interior was empty, but the pews were filled, not with people but with clothes arranged in sitting positions. Shirts, jackets, and pants, every item positioned as if someone had been there moments before. A low sound made him spin around. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the back where the vestry was. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Hello?" No reply. Just the footsteps, now echoing through the empty hall. He ran back to the car, fumbling again with the keys. As he drove out of the church parking lot, the figures in the windows seemed to shift. Every house he passed now had someone, or something, inside, standing still but unmistakably watching him. Eyes focused, unblinking, following his every movement. He didn't know how long he drove, trying to escape, but every street led him back to the same empty town square. The shadows were now more defined. People, maybe, or something that looked like people, standing silently in doorways, watching. The fountain reflected their faces, hollow and unchanging, like mannequins frozen mid-motion. And then he saw it. The figure at the end of Main Street. A man, perfectly still, but his eyes, they weren't human. Dark, endless, and fixed directly on Michael. He could feel it, a weight pressing on his chest, rooting him to the spot. He tried to drive away, but the streets twisted, unfamiliar, looping back toward that same square. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. The sky had grown gray, the sunlight dim, though it should have been midday. He finally parked near the old gas station, desperate to collect his thoughts. That's when he noticed the subtle detail he had missed before. None of the windows had reflections. None of the watchers cast shadows. It was as if they weren't really there. He shook his head, heart hammering, and started the car again. Driving out of town felt impossible. Every exit turned him back onto Main Street, past the fountain, past the houses, past the watching figures. Panic gave way to a chilling realization. The town wasn't empty. It was frozen. Trapped. And somehow he was trapped with it. Then he heard a voice. Quiet, almost a whisper, coming from the speakers in his car. "You see us." Michael froze. Every window now had someone staring. All human shapes, all unblinking, all impossibly still. And the voice continued, not from a person, not from a device, but inside his head. "You're next." He tried to reverse, to turn, to drive any direction, but it was useless. The streets shifted, and the town seemed to stretch endlessly, keeping him at its center. And in that eternal daylight, the figures advanced slowly, each step silent but deliberate, moving closer through the walls, the doors, the windows. Watching. Waiting. The car's engine finally died. And in that silence, Michael understood the horrifying truth. The town hadn't disappeared. He had. It started with an ordinary afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind of street where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved from their porches. For James and Sarah, life was simple. Their 7-year-old daughter, Emma, was a bright, imaginative child. Quiet, polite, and a little shy, but nothing about her had ever seemed unusual. Until that week in October. It began one evening after dinner. Emma had been unusually restless, fidgeting in her chair, glancing toward the window more than usual. "Mom," she said suddenly, her voice soft but insistent. "Did you know that Lily doesn't like to sleep with the light off?" Sarah froze mid-pour, her hand shaking slightly as she set the milk carton down. "Who's Lily?" she asked cautiously. "The girl who lives across the street. The one that disappeared," Emma said matter-of-factly, as if mentioning the weather. James and Sarah exchanged a glance, a cold knot forming in their stomachs. Lily Roberts, the 8-year-old from 2 houses down, had been missing for nearly 3 weeks. Her disappearance had dominated local news, with search parties, flyers, and a community in near panic. "Emma," James said carefully, "how do you know that?" Emma shrugged. "She told me. Last night. She said she doesn't like the dark. And she's scared of dogs." They laughed nervously, hoping it was just childlike imagination. But Emma's words didn't feel imaginative. She described Lily's habits with unnerving accuracy. The way she folded her blankets, the corner of her room where she kept her stuffed rabbit, even the small scratch above her left eyebrow that no one outside the family had mentioned. Days passed and Emma's observations grew darker. She began predicting events that no one else could possibly know. She would say, "She's going to hide in the closet tonight," or, "She's crying by the swing set." At first, James and Sarah chalked it up to coincidence. Until the night she correctly predicted a detail that no one had shared publicly, the exact location where the search party found Lily's abandoned backpack. The tension in the house became unbearable. Emma's parents began keeping a quiet vigil, watching her every move. They noticed subtle things that made their stomachs churn, Emma talking to herself, or rather, to someone invisible. "Shh, don't wake them," she whispered one afternoon while drawing in her coloring book. "I'll protect you, but you have to stay quiet." Neighbors started noticing too. One morning, Mrs. Harper from across the street knocked on their door. "I saw Emma talking to the air in the yard," she said in a hushed tone. "She's saying things about Lily. Things no child should know." Sarah tried reasoning with Emma. "Sweetie, you don't know what's real. Sometimes our minds make stories when we're upset." Emma's gaze pierced her, unblinking. "It's not a story. She's here. She's scared. She's hiding from him." James and Sarah didn't want to believe it, but every word Emma said kept coming true. And then one evening, Emma drew a picture that made their hearts stop. It was a crude sketch of a house, Lily's house, with a dark figure standing just outside watching through the window. Beneath the drawing in Emma's childish scrawl were 3 words, "He waits inside." The parents called the police immediately. Officers were dispatched to Lily's house, following the exact instructions Emma had drawn. What they found shook the neighborhood to its core. Inside the home, hidden behind a false panel in Lily's bedroom wall, was a man. He had been living there unnoticed for weeks. Dirty, disheveled, and dangerous. His presence explained the disappearances, the fear, and the strange signs that the town had missed. But no one had suspected a single person could have been hiding inside the house all along. James and Sarah didn't understand how Emma had known. She couldn't have seen him, hadn't been to the house alone. Yet every warning, every prediction, had led to saving Lily before something much worse could happen. After that night, the police cleared the house, the man was arrested, and Lily was brought home safely. But the family's lives would never be the same. Emma no longer played with her toys the same way. She avoided the dark corners of their home, whispered warnings that no one could understand, and often stared at empty rooms as if listening to a secret conversation. James and Sarah sometimes wonder if she really saw something, or someone, that no one else could. If a child could somehow perceive a danger that adults cannot, or if the world is stranger than they ever imagined. One evening, months later, Emma sat at the window, tracing the outline of Lily's house across the street. "He's back," she whispered. Sarah rushed to her side. "Who, sweetie?" "The man. He's always waiting. You just can't see him yet." And for the first time, James and Sarah felt a fear deeper than anything they had known. Not just for Lily, not just for themselves, but for a child who sees too much and a world that hides horrors in plain sight. They say daylight keeps most fears at bay. But for a woman named Clara, the sunniest afternoons became unbearable. Clara had moved into a modest apartment on the 3rd floor of a city building, excited about the new chapter in her life. Her living room window faced another building directly across the narrow street. A view of people going about their ordinary lives, framed in tidy apartments, laundry lines, and flickering televisions. At first, she didn't notice anything unusual. That was until she saw her. It was a woman in the apartment across the street. Or at least it looked like her. Clara could only describe it as a reflection, or maybe a doppelganger. She was sitting in a chair near the window, in perfect alignment with Clara's own movements, as if the other woman's body mirrored hers with uncanny precision. The first time it happened, Clara thought it was a trick of the light, or maybe her mind playing games from the stress of the move. But when she waved, and the figure across the street didn't wave back, instead tilting her head to the side in a slow, deliberate way, it didn't feel like a trick anymore. The next day she noticed something even worse. Clara had been stretching by her window when the figure across the street raised her arms, but not in the same motion. It was wrong, jerky, unnatural. A chilling sense of being watched clawed at her chest. She turned around, telling herself it was impossible. There was no way someone could mimic her so precisely without being inside her apartment. Days went by, and the figure began to move independently, acting in ways Clara hadn't yet done. She would brew coffee and the figure would sit perfectly still, staring. She would glance at a book and the figure would mimic reading, but always watching her. It was as if the figure's entire existence revolved around observing Clara. Clara tried ignoring it, convincing herself it was just some obsessive neighbor, someone with too much free time. But the anxiety built with each passing day. She stopped opening the curtains fully, peeking only through a sliver of glass. And the figure was always there, just beyond the glass, studying her like a predator assessing its prey. One Saturday afternoon, Clara invited her friend over. "You're not going to believe this," she whispered, pointing to the window. Her friend looked, squinting. At first she didn't see anything. But then her eyes widened. The figure in the apartment across the street raised its hand, and slowly waved at them. Clara froze. The figure's head tilted in a way no human head could, a slow, deliberate cock that made her stomach turn. "What the hell?" her friend murmured. Clara had had enough. That night, she blocked the view with blackout curtains and went to sleep with a knot of fear in her chest. She tried calling the building manager the next morning, asking if anyone new had moved in across the street. But no one had. The apartment had been empty for months. She didn't believe herself at first until she woke up to find her bedroom mirror fogged from condensation, even though she had not taken a shower. And in the center of the glass, scrawled in the condensation, were the words, "I see you." Panic set in. Clara tore down the curtains and called the police, who came by, checked the building, and assured her everything seemed normal. The apartment across the street was empty, completely vacant. No furniture, no tenant, no sign of anyone living there. Relieved yet unsettled, Clara thought the nightmare might finally be over. But the figure didn't disappear. Weeks later, while watering her plants, she glanced across the street. For a moment, the sun reflected off the empty window panes, and there she was again. Standing in the dark interior, perfectly still, staring directly at her. And then it smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a casual smile. A slow, knowing, patient smile that suggested she, or it, had always been there and had always been waiting. Clara ran inside and bolted the door. She never opened her curtains fully again. She installed blinds, taped the windows shut, even slept with her back to the glass. But every time she looked out, she could see the faint outline of someone, or something, where the apartment should have been. Eventually, friends stopped asking why Clara never invited them over. The police stopped returning calls. And she began to notice strange things in her own apartment. Small scratches on the windowsill, cold spots in the corners, the faint smell of old perfume she didn't own. Clara never saw the figure step outside. She never heard it knock or move about. But she knew it was watching. Always watching. Waiting. And in daylight, when the city was alive and bustling, it was there, behind the glass, grinning at her from an apartment that wasn't supposed to exist. She moved after a month. A city 2 hours away. A new apartment, new streets, new neighbors. She hoped the nightmare was over. But that night, as she unpacked boxes and glanced out the window, she froze. Across the street, in the dark outline of a long empty apartment building, she saw a faint shimmer, a silhouette in the window. And then a slow, deliberate wave. Clara dropped the box. And in the daylight that always should have felt safe, she understood that some things aren't confined to walls. Some things follow, silently, waiting, watching. And some reflections never stay where they belong. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the pine-covered hills when Michael decided to take the trail less traveled. He had hiked this forest countless times, yet something about that evening felt different. The air was heavier, and the usual bird song was replaced by the soft rustling of leaves in a wind that didn't seem to blow. About an hour in, he noticed a figure stumbling through the trees. At first, he thought it was another hiker lost in the fading light, but as he got closer, it became clear that the person wasn't just lost. They were disoriented, muttering to themselves and looking around with wide, panicked eyes. "Hey," Michael called gently. "You okay?" The stranger froze, staring at him like he was the first solid thing they'd seen in days. I think I've been walking in circles," the man said, voice shaking. "I don't know how I got here." Michael frowned, but something about the man's expression, frantic, exhausted, almost childlike, made him pause. "Come on, let's get you out of the woods. I'll help you find the main trail." They walked together in silence at first, the stranger's steps uneven, dragging behind Michael. He didn't ask too many questions. Sometimes people just needed a hand. But the stranger kept muttering names and locations that didn't exist. Or at least not anywhere Michael had ever heard. By the time they reached Michael's car, the sun had set, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. "I can call someone for you," Michael offered. The stranger shook his head. "No. I just need to rest." Something about that plea, so desperate and innocent, made Michael nod. He offered the stranger a ride to a nearby motel, but instead, the man insisted on following him home. Michael should have said no. But against his better judgment, he let him in. The first night passed quietly, almost unnervingly so. The stranger barely spoke, hovering in corners or sitting silently in the living room. Michael told himself it was fine. He was just tired, stressed, and probably traumatized from whatever had happened in the woods. Then the strange occurrences began. At first it was subtle. The smell of smoke in a room where no candles or fire had been lit. A light tapping on the window when Michael was alone, though the curtains were drawn. Items would shift, small things at first, books, pens, shoes, but nothing large enough to make him confront the stranger directly. He tried rationalizing it. Maybe he'd left the windows open, maybe he was imagining things after long days at work. But the stranger, they never seemed to leave. Every time Michael stepped into a room, he'd catch a glimpse of them standing just beyond his peripheral vision. And always that same disoriented stare, like they were seeing something he couldn't. The final straw came 3 nights later. Michael woke to the sound of scratching, soft, deliberate, coming from the kitchen. He grabbed a flashlight and crept down the hall. The stranger was standing in the middle of the room, tracing circles on the wooden floor with their finger. But what made Michael's blood run cold wasn't the scratching. It was the pattern. It was a map of his house. And on the map, every room contained small marks, small excess, and one in the center marked the bedroom. Michael froze. The stranger looked at him, and for the first time, a twisted smile cracked their pale, tired face. "You didn't see me, did you?" they whispered. He stumbled backward, fumbling for his phone. But the stranger was already there, blocking the door, their shadow stretching unnaturally long across the walls. "I've been following you," they said. "Since the woods. Watching. Waiting." The words made no sense. Michael backed into the living room, heart hammering, but when he turned, the stranger had vanished. Then came the whispering. From the walls, the corners, even the kitchen sink. Names he didn't recognize, dates, warnings. And in the middle of the floor, scrawled in the dust, was a single message. "You should have left me there." The next morning, Michael's neighbors reported hearing strange noises from his house. Crying, whispering, footsteps pacing endlessly. When the police arrived, the house was empty. No sign of the stranger. No sign of Michael. Only his car remained in the driveway, doors unlocked, keys inside, and the faint smell of smoke lingering in the air. Weeks later, the authorities found the same strange pattern etched into the dirt of the forest trail Michael had hiked. Small scratches forming an identical map of his home. And in the center, a single mark, like an X perfectly where the bedroom should have been. No one ever saw Michael again. And some say if you hike that trail alone, you might hear soft footsteps following behind you, and a whisper just beyond the trees. "Don't turn around. I'm already here."